You've just stumbled upon the most mediocre podcast on the planet. I'm Chris, and this is Average Joe. Let's talk about it. No topics too real, all interpreted through a GenX lens. The show's unscripted, all truth, sprinkled with a little bit of embellishment. Now, let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today, buckaroos, boys and girls, we're going to be reaching down real deep, and we're going to give your inner child a big hug. How are we doing that? Well, we're going to talk about cartoons. Now, I know, cartoons. How does that figure in to adults watching YouTube podcasts equate to anything that I've been talking about in any of the episodes? Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, we come from a time where cartoons raised us, just like the TV shows, just like music and everything else that we dabble in on this show. But today, we're moving on to cartoons. And hey, next time, it might be toys. And after that, maybe we'll do the stupid games that kids played. That wouldn't be that a fine thing. Any case, moving right along, let's talk about it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Really? A whole episode about cartoons? Why, yes, indeed. And I could probably do more than just one episode. But this isn't really about cartoons. It's about what all of these are all about. Growing up, Gen X. Let's go. It's about a time before streaming, before YouTube, before DVRs, before Netflix knew what you wanted to watch, before you did. Back then, if you wanted to see your favorite show, you had one chance. That's it. You sat down when it came on, and if you missed it, you fucked. But thanks to rewinds and thanks to reruns, we get to see them over and over again if we like. And so we did. But back then, no rewind, no pause. There wasn't even another TV in most houses. I'm pretty sure I grew up with one centrally located in the living room. Wasn't until later on, I think I was early teens before I got my first 13-inch black and white TV. Cartoons ain't that fun if you can't see them in color. We survived, and that's what it's all about. So what kind of cartoons did we survive on? Well, shit. There's quite a few, and we're going to get through them as fast as we can. We can't name them all, but we're going to name some of the best, and we're going to have a long walk down memory lane. But because of cartoons that became a part of a rhythm in our lives, our after schools, our before schools, and our Saturdays especially were something to look forward to. In fact, Saturday morning was practically a national holiday, for God's sakes. And eventually, they even made their way into prime time. Thank you, Simpsons. Well, I was putting together this episode, making a list of all the shows I remembered, and honestly, I had to stop because I realized there were far too many. So today, like all the other lists that I've put together thus far, we aren't doing rankings. It's just one average Joe remembering the cartoons that helped raise an entire generation. So let's get into the early years. For a lot of us, the first cartoons we watched weren't even from our generation, and we didn't know it at the time, nor did we care. They were reruns. You get up before school, pour yourself a bowl of cereal, there they'd be on the TV. The likes of like the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Tom and Jerry and the Chaos, Bugs Bunny, Yogi Bear, Top Cat, and the all-seeing Mr. Magoo, the Pink Panther, and many others. But some of those cartoons were already 20 years old by the time we watched them, and because we didn't know, we didn't care. They had personality. You knew exactly who these characters were within 30 seconds of turning the television on, even if it was the first time you'd ever seen them. Old Fred Flintstone, always screaming at Wilma. For whatever reason, I know it wasn't a domestic or anything, but he just was a loudmouth, everyday guy trying to get through the tough times. An old bedrock. George Jetson, basically all of us today, surrounded by technology that was supposed to make life easier, but somehow made it more complicated. And then Jane taking all of his wallet, leaving him a couple bucks, and bailing. But Tom and Jerry, they didn't need to talk. They didn't talk. No dialogue. Why? Because it was just pure chaos. Them running after each other every second of every episode. The only in between was old Spike. And actually, Spike, I think, spoke, if I'm not mistaken. Probably one of the few characters that ever got on there that spoked. He spoked it. In any case, what about the little guitar playing cowboy mouse that would always bust a string and have to run after Tom to pull one of his whiskers. That was great. And then Spike's son. I don't know his name. Maybe it's Spike Jr., but funny. And then you got adventure and imagination. There were cartoons that made us feel like we were on an adventure. Think about shows like Jonny Quest, Space Ghost, Aquaman, and Scooby-Doo. Who didn't watch Scooby-Doo on the reg, right? Flash Gordon. I didn't watch too much Flash Gordon, but it's in the list because I know it's pretty popular. But it also goes in line with the idea that those shows were all about adventure, mystery, and, they had monsters, secret laboratories, ancient temples, aliens, villains trying to take over the world. And so, like, shows like Jonny Quest, I absolutely love that show. And probably because it was pretty, I don't know, I think it was a little bit more mature than most of the cartoons that we were watching at the time. There was a storyline, there was a plot, there was some pretty intense action as far as a kid's cartoon is concerned. But it was great. Hell, people got kidnapped. And there were giant robots, mutants, secret organizations. And it wasn't just slapstick comedy. In shows like Jonny Quest, you may have the one character that's supposed to bring the comedy. But for the most part, that cartoon was on the more serious side, but easy to get into. And Scooby-Doo, let's be honest. If I could hear that old guy with the mask getting pulled off at the end of that show, but was always, and I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky teenagers. Did he say teenagers? Did he say kids? What did he say? If you know, leave it in the comments. But moving on, the ones that taught us something, those I don't think I really got into as much. I knew they were there, and from time to time I'd watch them. For instance, let's talk for a second about Romper Room. I believe I watched Romper Room when I was a little, and hell, that was a good show. It was entertaining. Kept my attention, even as a young toddler. I don't know how old I was when I was watching it. I just know that my favorite part, for whatever reason, this is what I'm remembering, is that they would all have like these little cardboard cars and trucks that they would get into, and they would run around the room. And I don't know if it was me and I was in one of those, it'd be Crash Derby, baby. But I enjoyed watching that show, and I did learn quite a bit. Probably not as much as watching like Schoolhouse Rock. I mean, that was actually educational. Probably one of the first educational programs or cartoons that I can remember before all this other stuff has come out. Remember songs like Conjunction Junction, What's Your Function, or I'm Just a Bill. Silly, but still rememberable. Memorable. 3 is a magic number. It's funny. I probably forgot half of what I learned in middle school science, but I can still sing every word to some of those songs. And I don't know how many people got into Davy and Goliath. It was one of those stop motion animation style shows, and it had a kind of like a religious undertone to it. Although I didn't really get any of that. I think it was more about teaching. I'm sure it was teaching things out of the Bible, but it was also teaching the principles behind it without thumping you over the head with it. And it was at a much slower pace. And I think that was intended because a lot of people would probably walk away and, dump their cereal out. I don't know. But that was a different kind of message. And I didn't mind it. It was one of those shows that made you stop and think a little. But it's funny how cartoons sometimes taught values without making it feel like a lecture. And that's good. We don't need those. After school was an event, for sure. Everybody's busting ass to get home, make it home in time to watch at least an hour or two of cartoons, usually starting like right around, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, going until maybe 5. And then it was time to, hit the bricks and go out, ride bikes and whatnot. But, sometimes that wasn't the most important thing. Going outside and playing kick the can or hide and seek was more of an after school event than watching cartoons was sometimes. But if you remember, you come home, late 70s, early 80s, this is where cartoons exploded. You'd race home from school because you knew exactly what time your favorite show came on. Shows like Super Friends, Captain Caveman, Hong Kong Phooey, which I thought was amazing. And I'm pretty sure the voice actor that did him was the black guy from The Shining. So if you didn't know that, put 2 and 2 together. You can almost remember his voice because it stood out. Hong Kong Phooey. What a throwback. Plastic Man. I don't know where I came with this one, but I remember watching it as a kid. I loved it. And it was like one of those strange superheroes that it's weird. It's almost like, who's the guy? Who's the guy? Fantastic Four guy. Reed Richards? Is that his name? Yeah. I don't remember what his Fantastic Four call sign was, but maybe Plastic Man was a ripoff. I don't know. It was still good. I wasn't watching the Fantastic Four cartoons after school. Josie and the Pussycats, I put it on here. And you know, if you go back, and probably I haven't even named some that are coming either, but if you go back and you think about the ones I've named so far, let's just kind of tally how many of these cartoons have been turned into live action cinema. All right, so Josie and the Pussycats reminded me of that because I do remember. And speaking of Reeds, Tara Reid was in there. It wasn't bad for the time. But then toy companies, they got smart. They figured it out. They said, what if the cartoon sold the toys? And the toys sold the cartoon. Oh, it's a win-win. Let's go, Hasbro, Mattel. But suddenly, there was He-Man. And if you didn't know He-Man's counterpart, remember She-Ra? Now, what I don't get is He-Man is a dude. And so the pronouns he, and he's a man. So why would she be She-Ra instead of She-Woman? Ponder that. I think it just wouldn't sound right. But then again, I wonder who put the He-Man thing together and thought that was okay. Some things, once they grow on you, they just never go away. So, of course, if I say, hey, why wasn't She-Ra She-Woman? You probably think to yourself in your lizard brain, well, fuck that. Sounds like shit. Well, yep. What if the roles were reversed and She-Ra was She-Woman and came out first long, long time ago, and He-Man was He-Ra? Yeah, man, that don't work either. Anyway, let's move on. Transformers. Look, man, if we're not talking about these next ones, then you're in the wrong game. Transformers, Thundar the Barbarian. Let's bring it back. Come on. A little obscure, maybe not. I remember watching quite a bit of that. I mean, it was like Conan the Barbarian mixed with He-Man. There was always knockoffs, 100%, but some of those knockoffs were good. I mean, if you think about like Transformers and GoBots and G.I. Joe and Mask and all those, right? So they're on here. ThunderCats, Silverhawks, same idea, right? Space, family, saving the universe. Voltron. Well, Voltron had its own little Dollar General version, right? You remember the Tigers were the original Voltron version. And they said, you know what? We're doing so well. Let's turn these into Walmart edition Voltron, and we'll make it out of cars, which was cool. It's a cool concept. Unfortunately, I think where they dropped the ball was the kinds of cars they used. I mean, they could have used like Ferraris and Porsches and Lamborghinis and shit. Instead, they went with like, I don't know, stuff I ain't never seen before. Some generic stuff. If you're going to go all in. Don't go half-assed. So I am proud and at the same time ashamed to say I did have the dime store Voltron, the vehicle edition. I got it for a birthday present. It was pretty cool. Hey, man, to each his own. Apparently, the original Voltron either was sold the fuck out or it wasn't in the budget. G.I. Joe. Need I say more? But here's one. And this one, to me, I think this one's a little bit of an outlier. I'm not sure if anybody got into Robotech. It was one of those ones where it was a little bit more mature. It was, Japanese anime, really cool, even for the time. And it was a soap opera, basically. I mean, so much so that it was one of the, you think about it like this, right? Most cartoons, they're going to grab you for 30 minutes and then you're done. The next 30 minutes on the following day, it's a different 30 minutes. It had nothing to do with the last 30 minutes. But for Robotech being like a cartoon space opera, something totally different. I mean, there was a love story in there. There's broken hearts. There's people becoming alcoholics. And, at the same time, aliens are annihilating humans and destroying Earth. So there was a lot going on there. But every single episode rolled into the next one like any primetime TV series on television today. So if you haven't seen it, give it a look, man. And I don't mean the new ones that have come out. I'm talking about the old ones that were back in the 80s. But back then, they were basically 30-minute toy commercials. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, to a certain degree, you could probably say, yeah, they're selling toys, whatever. But, one came before the other. So to me, it was cartoons first. And then they decided, let's put some let's put some toys out there. Let's get some action figures and let's go the whole 9 yards and see what happens. And for me, it was just a way to act out some episodes that I had seen. It's just pretty cool. I mean, if you had enough of whatever show you're watching with the action figures and like Castle Grayskull, if we're talking He-Man, there's a lot going on there. But we can touch on that when I do a GenX toy episode. But in any case, right? We didn't care if they were toy commercials. We just wanted to watch something. Looking back, there were basically 30 minutes of selling toys, but we didn't care. We loved them. And honestly, some of those stories were really good, especially like what I just said about Robotech. And who didn't want the Sword of Omens? I mean, ThunderCats. I'm pretty sure that's going to be on the list of live action motion pictures soon as well. Mumra, Lion-O, Thunder, 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 ThunderCats. Who didn't want Optimus Prime's trailer, though? I mean, even if it was the trailer, I didn't have a lot of Transformers. I think I had like 2. I don't know what it was, man. I was a welfare kid or what, but I had some dime store shit because I love the Transformers and I can't remember having any. I think I had the GoBots instead or something. I don't know. But Optimus Prime's trailer, you didn't even need the rig. Like, the trailer had all this cool shit in it. Who didn't imagine themselves piloting one of the lions from Voltron? I mean, come on. You think about it now. There's no shame. If you're a kid and you got into that and you were thinking to yourself, hey, man, I want to be the Green Lion. Get Tiny out of there. I could fly it better. That was us. It's okay. But I think a lot of our imagination came from those shows. They gave us heroes, good versus evil, standard stuff. I think when you're watching shows at that age, though, I think it's more meaningful. So, when we sit here and we talk about, hey, we watch the heroes, comic books, graphic novels, they're called today, good versus evil. Yeah. That's commonplace for a lot of things, right? You got an antagonist and a protagonist. But if you don't have a good show, that shit ain't going to work. And all those ones that I named off already, that was pretty good stuff. But it taught you to do the right thing, taught you to stand up for your friends, pretty solid lessons, right? And then the lighter side, because not everything had to save the universe. Sometimes you just wanted something fun. So how about them Smurfs? And honestly, I think those movies kind of ruined my Smurf experience. But look, man, Smurfette, she was the only female in that whole village. I don't know what's going on there. And I don't know who was writing that show and who came up with the idea. But if he's in a padded room, that's probably where he should be, especially during these times. In any case, what I know is Azrael was the cat and Gargamel was the bad guy. And for whatever reason, he liked him some Smurfette, if I'm not mistaken. But hopefully I am. Inspector Gadget, probably like just goofy, but cool, right? The daughter was the smart one with the dog, super intelligent. Inspector Gadget just was a bumbling idiot, but the guy had so many cool little gadgets that you always wondered what they were going to come up with in the next episode. And so that's what was entertaining. That's what kept you coming back. Heathcliff, I think we call that Dollar General Garfield. I don't know, but I thought Heathcliff was way funnier, way cooler than Garfield could ever be. So, hey, if you disagree, I don't care. The Littles. Yes, I watched The Littles. Look, I don't think you really need to be concerned about whether or not I watched The Littles, because it's not like I was out there watching like Hello Kitty or Gem or shit, I don't know. Strawberry Shortcake? What else is there? I'm trying to think off the cuff some female-oriented, gender-focused cartoons that were back in the day. And so yeah, like Josie and the Pussycats, I guess, was one of them. But that was one of the first ones. In any case, The Littles. It was good. Little people with tails running around, hiding from giant humans living in the garden. It was pretty interesting and probably inspiration for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but good nonetheless. Gummy bears, jumping here and there and everywhere. All right, core memory unlocked. Tailspin. Come on, man. You're using the Jungle Book and you're going to put it into something cooler and it's on every day. Let's go. DuckTales, one of the best, and I had to watch it the other day. Well, let me correct myself. I didn't watch an episode of DuckTales the other day. What I did was, thanks to YouTube, I watched the intro music, and I forgot how catchy it was. It was good. All of them had great theme songs. but I think DuckTales might have been one of the greatest cartoon intros ever made. If you don't believe me, go back and watch it, man. You hear those first few notes and suddenly you're 10 years old again. Well, not too long after that, the world started to change. And as we got older, cartoons kind of grew up with us. Now, when I was writing this and I reread that phrase, I was thinking to myself, that's kind of stupid because I don't think it's a matter of those cartoons being written for people our age and following us through, decades of our lives until we get bored with cartoons. I think that as times have changed, they realized that they needed different types of shows to keep up with the times as they changed. So you could say, as we got older, cartoons kind of grew up with us, or you can say, as we got older, cartoons evolved to get older with us. I don't know. Maybe that's the same thing. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles showed up. Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael. Everybody remembers Michelangelo because of the pizza thing. But Raphael, man, he had never got no props. Well, sorry, Raphael. The Real Ghostbusters. Oh, what a jip. I'm not even sure if I watched The Real Ghostbusters as much as I watched anything else, but I know I've seen some from time to time, and maybe I'm lying to myself right now. Maybe I just haven't. Maybe my memory sucks. Maybe I did watch The Real Ghostbusters a lot. Listen, I saw that movie in the movie theater when it first came out. Like, no joke. I think the Friday that it came out, me and my mom went to a drive-in, as a matter of fact, when you had those silver things that you stick on your car. It's a speaker. And actually, I think they were evolving. I think, and I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. So going to movie theaters, actually more specifically drive-in movie theaters, back in the day, you would have this external speaker that has this little hook on it. And you hang it onto your door or up on your window, whatever. Bring it in the window. That's all you get. Mono, not even stereo. And then one day, because I remember this vividly, Ghostbusters, I went and saw, and they had where you could change, maybe it was an AM dial, maybe it was an FM dial. I don't remember if it's FM or AM, but you could adjust it to the frequency and listen to it in stereo in the car out of all the speakers. What a great thing. At least it was pretty awesome to me when it happened. And so my point is, I watched the Ghostbusters on the big screen, and then you got the Real Ghostbusters. And I think I just took a minute to get warmed up to it. Not a bad show overall, though. Pinky and the Brain. What are we doing today, Brain? Same thing we do every day, Pinky. Try and take over the world. It's a really bad impression of Pinky, but you get it. Animaniacs. Now, you want to talk about a show that was fun and full of chaos. Animaniacs, for sure. And I used to think that the one character was Ringo Starr, just the way he talked. I think, or maybe not. Were they all English? Did they all have English accents? And they talk like the Beatles? I don't recall. Leave it in the comments. Ren and Stimpy. I put them on here, and I used to watch them all the time. I don't know if that was like on Nickelodeon. Maybe it was Nick at Night. But Ren and Stimpy was not for public consumption. Especially, I think you had to be a certain age to watch Ren and Stimpy. I remember when they were big, I think I went to Hot Topic and I bought a t-shirt that said Red and Pimpy. And they were dressed up like Ren was dressed up like a hooker and Stimpy was dressed up like a pimp. And it said Red and Pimpy. Man, them were the days. But humor was weirder. It got weirder, but the stories also got smarter. And then something happened that nobody expected. Cartoons moved into primetime. And I was trying to remember the show that The Simpsons started on. Oh, God, it's at the tip of my tongue, man. But it's not that important. In any case, if you remember, put it in the comments. But you realize that The Simpsons weren't the first. And I didn't know this until I did a little research, but the Flintstones had done it years before. Apparently, they didn't make, 35 seasons of it. But The Simpsons, they're here forever. So suddenly, entire families were sitting down on Sunday nights to watch animated shows. It'll never be like it used to. And I don't know why it can't be, but Simpsons are still on. I'm not sure how many families are gathering around the television watching anything anymore. But times have changed. And that's what this show is for. This show is to enable you to tap into something that we have long forgotten, that we wish was still around. And everybody just goes about their own business now. Between social media, phones, video games, and all these technologies that were supposed to be helpful, has kind of segregated us. So when you come and you listen and you watch these episodes, I'm going to try to bring you back to a time where things were a lot simpler and we were more together. So moving on to cartoons that weren't just for kids anymore, let's go into liquid television. Now, liquid television was a part of MTV, and MTV had shows like Beavis and Butthead and Eon Flux, and those were, obviously, Mike Judge with Beavis and Butthead, doing his own thing. I think he just brought a new style of animation to the table. And so lucky for him, MTV picked up on it. And man, that show, 10 o'clock at night, every night as a teenager doing dumb shit was probably one of the best pastimes I can remember. And I think, just the way that it was formatted to where you're introduced to music probably you'd never heard before. I think it was a great combination of, stupid, funny, idiotic animation and music videos. So good on them. And, you can't beat that with a stick. But like Eon Flux, right? It's an anime and also on liquid television. But that's where these shows got their start. And then, of course, Beavis and Butthead broke away from liquid television and they got their own show. Because if you remember, liquid television was like Robot Chicken style. It was a potpourri of a whole bunch of different stuff just slammed together. And depending on what episode you were on or what the schedule was like, you may or may not see Beavis and Butthead one day, then another day was a different cartoon. So it was good that they were able to break away and have their own show. So, and I wasn't really giving two shits whether or not my parents liked that kind of stuff because they were really around to see me watching it by then anyway. So that didn't matter. But it wasn't the kind of show. So here's a funny story. And this has to do with your parents, whether or not they like cartoons that you watch. I remember my youngest son when he was 4. I think he was about 4. And I came in and he was watching, I don't know if it was Cartoon Network at night or maybe it was Comedy Central, wherever Family Guy started. In any case, so Family Guy's on and I'm getting ready to put him in bed and I'm watching it as I'm tucking him in and I'm hearing things and I'm noticing themes and, I cuss like a sailor. Hell, I was a sailor and all that stuff. So not very shocking, but I'm blown away by the type of animation that it is, like the adult themes and the way they're talking. And then he looks up at me and he says, "Daddy, why does that man have balls on his chin?" And I didn't get it at first, so I had to look. And I'm looking and I'm like, holy shit. He really is drawn like he's got balls on his chin. So yeah, go watch a lot of those characters. I think that was done on purpose. But in any case, another great show. So what did we lose? Over time, things have changed. Animation has changed. A lot of shows are completely 180 from what they used to be. Sometimes you can just draw some stick figures and put them on YouTube. And if they got some funny shit to say, it's entertaining. So that's okay. The art and the entertainment is not lost on me. But you know what I miss the most? It's not really the cartoons. It's that we all watched the same things. The next day at school, everybody had seen the same episode. So like a little sewing circle, you gather around, either before class, maybe during class, whatever, lunchtime. And you say, "Hey, did you see what happened on Transformers yesterday?" And everybody knew. Today, there are 1,000 channels, 10,000 streaming shows. Kids can each watch something completely different. Maybe that's better. Maybe it's not. But there was something special about sharing those moments. And you know what? Maybe cartoons weren't just entertainment. Maybe they were our generation's campfire stories. They gave us heroes, made us laugh, scared us maybe a little. I don't remember being too scared watching, maybe creeped out. I don't know. But they taught us a few things. And they gave us something to talk about with our friends on Monday morning. So here's my question for you. If you could only keep 3 cartoons from your childhood, just 3, what are they? For me, that's almost impossible, but I'd love to hear your picks. Thanks for hanging out with me for another episode of Average Joe Let's Talk About It. Until next time, don't forget where you came from. Hey, if this show took you to a place that you thought was long forgotten, don't worry. We've got more where that came from. And if you know a friend that would enjoy it too, grab them up, bring them with you, and we'll see you on the next episode.